1. Okay, let me start by telling you that until 2 years ago, I did not believe in the paranormal. It was probably because I had never experienced anything in the paranormal realm. I'm a South American who spent childhood and early adulthood on the Caribbean coast, lived for 20 plus years in the same apartment with my parents, and got a university degree in something that requires studying hard evidence and using logic, which matched my then natural skepticism. But then I decided to continue my education in a North American country, which is where I've been living for the last 4 years. I decided to stay because I fell in love and moved in together with my partner 3 years ago. We live in a nice apartment, and at least once a week we visit his family at his former house. My partner's house has always looked spooky. It was built around the 1940s, though there was a property on the grounds prior to that, which had been demolished in the 1930s. It's a big 2-story house with an open sky garage next to the entrance, a main hall, a library and study, a living room, kitchen, formal and informal dining room, 4 bedrooms upstairs. My partner's former room also has a playroom inside, a huge backyard, and the housekeeper's quarters in a separate area of the house. The feeling this house has always given me is that of loneliness, spookiness, dread, and darkness. You never see a beam of sunlight hit that house during the entire year, so it's always cold in there. Because of this, it's also really dark inside, and the makeshift of the stairway and doors are of dark brown wood, adding to the sense of spookiness. Before I tell you specifically about my experience, I have to say that my partner had lived in the house since age 2, and is currently occupied by my partner's mother and siblings. The parents are divorced. He says that he's been feeling some sort of energy in the house since he was 3, and everyone in the family has had their own share of paranormal encounters there. There are reportedly 6 different entities in the house that everyone has seen at one point or another. A young girl who crosses my partner's brother's room into his mother's room, a poltergeist in my partner's playroom, who turns lights on and off, opens and closes the door, and turns on unplugged fans. He calls that one Fanty. A little boy who has appeared next to the window in my partner's younger sister's room, who scared the living crap out of the young son of a former maid who was playing in that room. An angel in the stairway's rest, a ghost dog in the informal dining room, which has been seen running to the backyard, and a presence that one night some years ago followed my partner into the kitchen. He says that he heard the entity's footsteps approaching from behind, and even felt its breath on the back of his neck. Now my story. So approximately 2 years ago, we were having lunch in the house with the entire family. After that, my partner's mom left for her afternoon shift at her workplace, and so did his brother. His sister went upstairs to do homework, the housekeeper washed the used plates, and then went to her quarters. My partner was expecting a mechanic who was going to help him with the engine of a car he was trying to sell, and greeted him in the garage. I had some reading to do, so I went to the living room, sat in the couch, and started reading from my iPad. After a while, I heard the really loud noise of the engine finally starting, which startled me a bit. A couple of seconds later, I heard footsteps coming into the house from the outside. I looked up, and saw what I describe as a tall man with a top hat, shrouded in black mist. The footsteps sounded like those produced by really old-fashioned wooden-heeled men's shoes from a long time ago. This shadowy figure went from the entrance, passed in front of the library and stairway, into the hall, and then disappeared from my line of sight behind a wall obstructing it. But I could still hear the footsteps going into either the kitchen or the informal dining room. Their sounds started vanishing, so I decided to stand from the couch and follow the sound, thinking it might have been my partner's mom or his brother returning hurriedly for something either one had forgotten in the house. By this time, the footsteps had completely vanished. I went into the informal room and kitchen and saw no one. Thinking then that it might have been the housekeeper, I knocked on her door in her quarters, but she told me that she had been in there for a long while, ironing some clothes. I then went upstairs to ask my partner's sister, but she was asleep. Then I went to the garage where my partner was already dismissing the mechanic. I asked both of them if they had gone into the house, but they denied it. I then asked my partner if either his mom or his brother had gone into the house. and he showed me their vehicles were not in the garage, so none of them had come back. And that's when it hit me, after trying to find a reasonable explanation for what I saw. The answer was that it was none of the living, and I had witnessed a ghost. Probably the same one who breathed on my partner's neck years ago. It was really shocking to me, and it took me a while to accept it. A few weeks ago, we were again in that house. My partner had gone somewhere I didn't know, and I started calling out to him because we were in a hurry to leave to another place. I went from the informal dining room and into the hall, and saw a dark figure on the other side of the hall, turning the corner towards the living room. I thought it was him, and started asking him why he didn't respond to me. I followed my partner into the living room, and there was nobody there. Suddenly, my partner appears from upstairs. I asked him where he came from, and he said, "From the bathroom in my mom's room upstairs." So it came to me that I was following the shadowy ghost all over again. 2. Today I will be telling you all of my paranormal experiences, if I can even remember them all. The first story is from my last house. A little background. My mom, my stepdad, our dog, and me moved into this house when I was 12. It was actually a basement apartment. There were people living upstairs that rented out their basement. It's kinda confusing, but it was actually pretty big. So anyways, we moved in and everything was well. About a week after we moved, I had my friend over to see our new living space, and was really excited to show her. My dog, very peaceful, quiet, lazy, and just not violent at all, went into my room and started barking his head off. He never barked. He was standing on 2 feet and barking at the corner of my bed. It was really weird. So here I am, trying to calm my dog, but he just won't give up. For some reason, neither my mom or my stepdad heard it, and we even had the door open. So I went out to get them while my friend is freaking out, and then he calmed down like nothing happened. That was the first weird thing to happen in that house, but not the last. We would occasionally hear high heels walking above us, chairs being pulled out, and very loud bangs, all coming from upstairs. So we asked them if anything had happened, and they told us no, they were asleep. It would always happen at night. It was not until they went on vacation and the noises continued that we started feeling weird. They had an alarm as well, and it would go off about once a week for no apparent reason, but they never spoke about it. One day the noises were so loud my mom really thought that someone had broken in, so she went out to look, but there was nothing. The scariest thing to happen in that house, though, was to my stepdad. I went to the room, just woken up, and said, "Wow, you were up early today?" And I was like, "No, I just woke up." And as I said that, all the light from his eyes just vanished. He told me and my mom that he got woken up by what he thought was me staring at them. And then he asked me what was wrong, and I didn't say anything. I just kept staring until I walked away. He said that the girl he saw was wearing a white dress and had long black hair. I have brown hair, and I don't own a white nightgown. So I don't know why he thought that was me. Sometime later, we had dinner with our neighbors, where this topic came up. They told us that there was a freaking murder in this house. Like a girl actually got killed, and they even had the newspaper articles about it. It happened right outside my room. The girl who got killed was pregnant. The man who got her pregnant already had a wife, so he killed her and tried to make it look like a suicide, which he was apparently really bad at. At the time we lived in the house, we actually weren't having the greatest years. I spent 4 years in that house, and all of those years were filled with depression and anxiety. I never had hope, and it was always like a cloud of black smoke was hanging around me. Only in the house, though. I remember clearly that every time I went out, I was happy, and I thought it was weird. I told my mom about it, and she told me that the same thing happened to her. While living in that house, she got sick with stress, and it was a mess. My mom also told me that when she went to pee late at night, she thought my stepdad was on the computer. So right as she was closing the bathroom door, the man sitting on the computer waved and smiled at her, and she waved back, thinking it was my stepdad. And when she got out, the computer was turned off, and my stepdad was fast asleep. The last story on this post, I still have some more, but they deserve a post for themselves, is from my childhood. It's hard to imagine it's real, but I remember it so vividly. We were moving into an apartment. I was about 4. I was standing in my new room when my dad said, "I'll turn off the lights, are you coming?" And at the time I was really afraid of the dark, but for some reason, I said I wanted to stay. So he turned off the light and everything got pitch black, and I saw a girl. I wasn't scared, she wouldn't talk, but I tried talking to her. She was a little bit older than me, maybe 6 or 7. I thought she was an angel because I didn't know what ghosts were back then, but I don't know. She was in this glowing white light, and it just felt so pure I can't explain it. My dad got back and turned the light on again and she was gone. I never saw her again, but I thought about her a lot. What do you guys think? 3. It happened when I was 15. For context, I am 22 now. Before this happened, I had no belief in anything paranormal, and thought it was just not believable. However, the summer of 2011 proved me wrong. That summer I was visiting my grandma's boyfriend's house, which is located in Florida. This was the first time I was visiting his house, since my grandma had recently moved in with him that year. I was excited because it was my first trip on my own without my parents, where I could spend a week hanging out by the beaches. When I arrived, my grandma's boyfriend, who is a great guy, greeted me and gave me a tour of his modest house. A common theme I picked up on was Native American decor. He had family and descendants that were of the Sioux tribe in the Midwest, and spent several summers as a teenager on reservations with the tribe. It was neatly decorated, and towards the end of the tour, he pointed to a small leather pouch that was hanging near his bed. He became very composed and stated how that item was a gift given to him by the Sioux tribe after spending several summers with them. He explained further on how it was a medicine pouch, which contained the crushed bones of a buffalo and a medicine man. He stated very clearly and without hesitation how his medicine man is a spirit who protects him, and the place where the pouch is. And then he said, "He might come visit you tonight, since you're a new guest." Of course, being the 15-year-old teenage boy, I felt no fear and laughed it off with him. I mean, there was no way a man could pop out of a bag and visit me. Well, by writing this story, you can probably guess that I was wrong. Shortly after giving the tour, my grandma's boyfriend had to leave. He's a contractor for an electrical company, and had to drive up to northern Florida for a project the next day. So it was just my grandma in one room with the pouch, and her 2 chihuahuas, and me on the other side of the house in the guest room. I remember falling asleep without any problems around 11 p.m. However, I awoke to what I thought was a burglar, with loud noises coming from the kitchen and living room next door. I checked my phone and it was a little past 3 a.m. The noises continued and I began to panic. There was a security alarm in the house that was armed before bed, but I heard no alarm. My grandma, who could sleep through a nuclear explosion beside her, would not be doing crazy loud things at such an odd time. However, right as I was about to get out of bed, the door vibrated and shook. The noises from the kitchen stopped. I buried my head in the pillow and under the covers. The room got super cold, but yet I was sweating bullets. I kept pinching myself to see if it was a dream, but it wasn't. I peeked out of the corner of my eye from the pillow to see down the hallway, and I froze, locked in a gaze with a pale silhouette figure that resembled a Native American. He had a face that looked leathery and with wrinkles, his lips drawn into a thin, straight line that was devoid of emotion. His eyes were pure white, and he looked straight through me. I could only feel chills go down my spine. The hair stood up all over my body. My bed felt like it was shaking too. It felt like an eternity before he turned away. Almost like he was walking frame by frame. Like when you view things with a strobe light on. And then the door vibrated again. Finally, he left my room. He made some more noise outside with banging cabinets and such again, and then it stopped. Naturally, I didn't sleep. Too scared to walk out of my room. That 15-year-old charisma and bravery was out the window. As soon as daylight hit the curtains of my room, I ran out to discover all the cabinets open. pots and pans thrown about, and then in the living room with all the pictures and paintings thrown from the walls to the ground. I immediately woke up my grandma, who was shocked for a minute. But then she nonchalantly stated, "Oh, that ghost again, making such a mess." I stood with my mouth wide open, trying to form sentences, how to tell my grandmother that this isn't normal. But I guess she was already used to it. The boyfriend came back later that evening, and I told him about the encounter. He said he wasn't surprised, since like he said earlier, I was new. Apparently I am one of the many family members that has seen this medicine man. Apparently he's friendly. He just wanted to see if I was nice? At least they're somewhat considerate in the afterlife. But I mean, I have other opinions. Looking back now, I should have taken pictures. I only had a crappy flip phone at the time with a barely usable camera, and I just shut out most of the experience for years because I was terrified, honestly. I stayed for the rest of the week, still waking up at the same time, 3 a.m., but I didn't see the medicine man again. The house felt like there was a heavy presence whenever you would walk in. Sometimes during the day, the dogs would start low growling at the master bedroom where the pouch was, and nothing would be there. I was gracious for the hospitality, but I have never ventured to his house again. They've moved to Alabama now. I hate to be a rude family member, but I don't think I'll be coming down for a housewarming gift. If you've made it this far reading, thank you. Just wanted to get this off my chest. About half of the people I tell this story to don't believe me. They enjoy it for the story, but not the actual experience of encountering something most people don't understand. I shut it out for a long time because it just was really terrifying. 4. So rewind about 7 years, and we are in a slightly older house renting. By slightly older, I mean approximately 30 years or so. We originally moved in with my then girlfriend, now wife, her 2 sons, and one of my best friends. Nothing immediately jumped out at us as weird, even for the first year or so we lived there. But there were a few occasions where my friend would have odd occurrences throughout the night. We mainly just brushed it off as nothing. Going into the 2nd year living there, the shadows started to appear. This is where I began to think that something was sharing the house with us. On one particular evening, my girlfriend and I were in the kitchen talking. I was leaning with my back against the sink, which gave me a peripheral view of the breakfast nook to my right, and the walkway to the living room to my left. In my peripherals there was a blur about 3 feet high that ran down the walkway to my left, which led from the 2 additional bedrooms in the house to the living room. My girlfriend's kids were always running around the house, so I didn't think anything of it, except when it dawned on me that the kids weren't there that week. They were visiting their dad, and my friend was seeing his girlfriend that night. I brushed it off as a mind trick and let it go. About a month later, I'm now working night shift and my girlfriend is at the house alone. Friend was gone for the weekend. She chats with me on Hangout, saying she saw a shadow run by her, then realized the kids weren't there. Another week they were visiting their dad. And now my experience becomes relevant. I tell her about my experience and we compare notes, until confirming we saw the same thing. The shadow child, as we begin to call it, would make several more appearances, seemingly not wanting to be seen for more than a millisecond, or make more of a presence known. Then the walkers started. Our master bedroom was situated on the opposite end of the house, but the bedroom door faced the living room. Starting roughly a month or 2 after the shadows experience started, at night when it was dead quiet, I would hear and sense activity right outside the bedroom door. I'll explain the sense in a minute, but the physical hearing would be the equivalent of hearing the carpet crunch underneath someone's feet when they walk on it. So much so that it would wake me from a sleep, and I would have trouble getting back to sleep after. Now by sense, I've always had this weird ability to feel an energy in the room. The best way to describe it would be that I could hear a different frequency of someone entering or nearing the space I'm in, without actually hearing it, per se. It's just a sensation. The sensation that I got, along with the crunching footsteps, was as if there were 6 or more people walking in circles right outside the door. This also intensified after my friend had moved out. Coming closer to the time we were preparing to move out came another experience. I am an avid drummer, so naturally, like any other responsible drummer, I kept the kit in the garage, so the whole neighborhood could be a part of my concert. Typically, while working days, I would be home at around 3 and play drums for a bit before my girlfriend came home from work. Our laundry room was between the garage and the interior door, so there was 2 doors to pass through when going from the garage to the house. The door going into the house had about a half-inch gap at the bottom to see light through. About the time I expected her to be getting home, I got up and went to make my way inside. I opened up the first door closest to the garage, opening up into the laundry room. Once in the laundry room, I heard and saw the door handle into the house jiggle, as if someone was placing their hand on it to come in. The jiggling stopped, and looking down at the gap, I see the shadows of legs walking away from the door. I assumed that my girlfriend was coming to tell me she was home. Heard the first door open and knew I was on my way inside anyway, so she walked away. I opened the door and looked into the house to find nothing. I called her name, nothing. I looked outside. She wasn't home yet. What the fuck? Fast forward to move-out day, and we get situated into our new home. But we make frequent trips back to the old house to get the last of our things and to clean up. At this point, both of us are on edge and we don't know why. We finally discuss it, and we both come to the conclusion that we have this eerie feeling at the house. Answering in unison, like something here is mad at us for leaving. We seem to take turns for who is going to fall ill and become nauseated while at the house, only for it to subside once we leave. So we moved out completely, and all the aforementioned experiences stopped. Whatever it was stayed with the old house. 5. When I would guess about 8, I was sleeping in a bed in a motel somewhere in California. Can't say where. My father was a drinker and gambler, and used to move us about every 3 to 4 months. From Santa Monica, California, to the Bay Area, to Lake Tahoe, to Palm Springs, and then back to Santa Monica. We lived in motels a lot growing up, mom, dad, brother, me, and always a dog. I was 8 or 9 years old before I realized that most people didn't move every few months. I thought everybody did. I was shocked when I would ask kids at school, "How long have you lived here?" And they would look at me weird and say, "All my life." Shocked me. Anyway, I was lying in the motel bed. My mom and dad had one bed, my brother and I the other, in one big motel room. And a horrible, evil voice was screaming at me, like 2 inches from my nose. Screaming in some language I did not understand. I woke up, I think halfway into it, screaming at me. A definite voice of a very, very angry man, screaming a language I could not understand, screaming at me. I was awake for at least half of it. I later dismissed it as a dream that I had not yet woken up fully, but about a year ago, I met a woman who told me the same thing once happened to her. Another time I was 13, living with my older half-brother, 12 years older than me, and his wife in San Jose, California. They were newlyweds. Back then, 1973, San Jose was half filled with empty lots, tall grass, and these yellow flowers that stuck to your pants. Anyway, I was actually cutting school that day. I have a sleeping disorder, chronic insomnia, and I didn't sleep the night before, so I would ditch school and try to find a place to sleep. I actually found a place behind the local Safeway. It was winter, and San Jose gets chilly and wet in winter, especially in the mornings. So I would lay behind Safeway behind the huge refrigeration units that would exchange hot and cold air. They would blow the hot air out of the units to the outside with huge fans. They sounded like airplane engines, and the sound, white noise of the huge twirling fans and the very warm air coming out put me to sleep. So I put a few large boxes in strategic places and go to sleep, sleeping on cardboard. I could actually go to sleep, wonderful, but, of course, some Safeway employee caught me and chased me away. Too bad. Anyway, I start walking to find another place to go to sleep. I'm thinking maybe a patch of woods, so I walk across this large vacant field. San Jose had a lot of them in 1973, not so today. I passed by what seems to be foundations of an old house and barn, back in the day when most of the valley was farms. The house and barn were gone, but the foundations remained. I could tell they were old. Anyway, this was now about 10 a.m. Daylight, although it was still a bit chilly, about 45 degrees by then, cloudy and damp. All of a sudden I heard a massive laughing right behind me. Seemed to be about a foot behind me. What sounded exactly like an old evil witch cackle. Startled the hell out of me. I turned around and saw nothing. Nobody around me, nothing near, no place for anyone to hide. Nowhere to hide. Nothing to hide a speaker in. Nothing. Anyway, I looked all around again, then I heard... the most evil, horrible, satanic witch cackle you ever do not want to hear. I turned around, and I could tell that the cackle was coming from the air about 2 feet from my head, about a foot above my head. Very clearly, very, very loud. No, I was not on drugs, never smoked cannabis. Had not drank any alcohol, no head injuries, daylight, nothing around for anybody to hide behind. No poles or anything around, no trees for at least 30 yards. The voice was obviously coming from the air about 2 feet away from me, about a foot above my head, and 2 feet away. Very loud and clear. Did I run? No. I was too fascinated trying to figure out what happened. I read later about banshees, but I guess banshees scream instead of laugh and cackle. This was definitely an evil witch's laugh, not a scream. Long and horrible. I never returned to that field again. My mom and brother later moved back with our dad in Southern California. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Paranormal Stories, episode 76. No, you're not hallucinating, it's not Friday again. It is Tuesday, and instead of doing subscriber stories, I decided to do paranormal today. I do have subscriber stories, but the thing is I don't really have enough of the ones that I put in these types of videos. Like, I've got some retail ones, I've got some the other types of ones as well. So I've got enough to be going on with, just not enough for this particular video. But not to worry, there's always something to be done on a Tuesday. Although I will just remind folks, if you do have a story you'd like to share with me, you can send it to kingofthecities@gmail.com, and the email is in the description of every single video. So if you do have a story, please do send it through there. Don't try and send it through Facebook, because it's terrible to read them and those little messages. Plus, I hardly ever check Facebook. Okay, and with that I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.